In 2026, the night skies over Tehran and Tel Aviv are regularly lit by sovereign missile exchanges. Drones swarm across borders, and direct U.S.-Israeli military strikes on Iranian soil are an active daily reality. The global economy is violently reacting. Oil prices are spiking, shipping lanes are paralyzed, and what began as a regional conflict has rapidly grown into the most dangerous, economically disruptive rivalry on Earth. But if you rewind the clock 60 years, you find a jarring historical contradiction. Throughout the Cold War, Iran and Israel were close strategic allies. They shared intelligence networks and even operated a joint pipeline to pump Iranian oil directly to the Mediterranean. The two non-Arab nations in the Middle East looked at the rising tide of Arab nationalism surrounding them and found common ground. A quiet, highly pragmatic partnership kept them securely tied together. So, how did two partnered nations, sharing pipelines and military intelligence, devolve over a century into existential enemies, locked in an active, overt war? The alliance collapsed in 1979. The Western-backed Shah was forced out of power, and Ayatollah Khomeini took control through the Islamic Revolution. Khomeini immediately faced a massive political challenge. He was a Shia cleric in a majority Sunni region, and he needed a way to legitimize his brand-new government as the supreme authority for the entire Islamic world. He found his unifying cause in fierce, uncompromising anti-Zionism. Opposing the existence of the Jewish state became a foundational pillar of his new regime's ideology. Overnight, the Israeli embassy in Tehran was handed over to Palestinian leaders. The former strategic partner was officially rebranded as the Little Satan, and a pragmatic geopolitical relationship was entirely replaced by an ideological holy war. The new Iranian regime wanted to strike at Israel, but they had a glaring tactical problem in the 1980s and 90s. They simply lacked the conventional military strength to project power across the Middle East and fight a traditional war. Instead, Tehran built a proxy network, the axis of resistance. They funneled cash and weapons to Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza. Decades later, they expanded south to the Houthis in Yemen. They effectively built a ring of hostile forces entirely encircling Israel. Iran equipped these non-state actors with state-level firepower, including precision-guided missiles and heavy mobile rocket artillery. Down in Yemen, the Houthis secured the southern front, transforming into a heavily armed militia capable of launching drones and ballistic missiles across the region. By using proxies, Iran bled Israeli resources through a shadow war for 40 years. They maintained plausible deniability and kept the physical destruction far away from Iranian soil. In the early 21st century, the conflict escalated far beyond proxy skirmishes. The international community realized Iran was aggressively pursuing a nuclear program and actively spinning uranium centrifuges. This satellite image shows the scale of Iran's nuclear infrastructure. We are looking at massive, heavily fortified industrial facilities built deep underground, far exceeding the requirements for basic civilian power generation. For Israel, an Iranian nuclear weapon is the ultimate red line. They view a nuclear-armed Tehran not as a diplomatic bargaining chip, but as a literal threat to the survival of their nation. Forced to respond, Israel took the shadow war to the next level. They unleashed the Stuxnet computer worm, a highly sophisticated cyber attack that physically destroyed Iranian centrifuges, and began a covert campaign of assassinating top Iranian nuclear scientists. Both nations were now trading blows in the dark. The unwritten rules of their covert rivalry were stretched to the absolute breaking point, guaranteeing that any future spark would ignite the entire region. That crisis arrived on October 7, 2023. The Hamas attack on Israel was the spark that finally lit the regional fuse, pulling the entire axis of resistance into active combat simultaneously. This multi-front pressure eventually forced Israel and its allies to strike the source of the munitions. As civilian airports and infrastructure began to burn, the taboo against direct retaliation vanished. By 2026, the proxy shield failed. Decades of plausible deniability were replaced by a cycle of direct, escalating sovereign strikes that pushed the region toward total war. This cycle culminated in Operation Epic Fury, a massive joint U.S.-Israel strike on Iranian soil. The mission resulted in the assassination of Iran's supreme leader, shattering the regime's command structure and leaving a volatile power vacuum in Tehran. With the central leadership gone and both nations trading direct strikes, the old rules of engagement have permanently dissolved. Overt warfare is now the baseline for their relationship. This collapse is no longer confined to the borders of the Middle East. The shockwaves of this overt war are tearing through the global economy. Houthi drone strikes in the Red Sea and Iranian threats in the Strait of Hormuz are actively paralyzing the world's most critical shipping lanes. When commercial freighters can't move, the chain reaction is immediate. Brent crude oil spikes past $120 a barrel, shipping costs quadruple, and within weeks, that geopolitical chaos shows up as surging inflation at American grocery store checkout counters. The 100-year evolution from allies to enemies has ended with a regional collapse that leaves the global economy permanently exposed to the crossfire.